Okay, zoning board, we are live. Will remain off. Go for it.
Thank you, Matt. Welcome to the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for October 7th, 2025. This is a work session, so we have no hearings this morning.
Good morning.
We do have our alternate on the first decision sitting next to me and our vice chair in the audience. Our first application this evening and post-hearing decisions is Jeffrey Minich at 93 Duryea Avenue in Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-5-2-15. Size and location is 11,250 square feet at 93 Duryea Avenue. Soundview Estates, Lot 9, map number 1929 in Montauk. The description is to allow an existing patio to remain 13 feet from the side yard property line where 20 feet is required. Relief sought is one variance of what does it say? It's not posed 7 feet, I think it is, right?
7 feet.
Yeah, 7 feet of 255-1110 of the East Hampton Town Code is required to allow the existing patio to remain 13 feet from the side yard lot line where 20 feet foot setback is required and any other relief necessary. The zoning district is B residence zone X flood zone and the secret class is type 2. And who's going to lead this off? Okay, Ed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeffrey Minich and Amy Agnello. Well, board will remember that the initial hearing was held on August 12th, 2025. We had a continuation for the purpose of reposting the property, and that hearing was held on September 16th, 2025. The survey we were working from was from March 26, 2025 by Gary Benz Surveying and Land Planning. The applicant was represented by Devin Zuccardi of the Laurel Group. There was a masonry plan from the Laurel Group that described and located the patio in question. We received that, the town received that on November 22nd, 2024. The town planner that evening was Sarah Lewis. The parcel is 11,250 square feet, and the existing lot coverage is 4,024 square feet, which is 35.8%, where 5,625 square feet, or 50%, is allowed. The existing building coverage on the lot is 1,770 square feet, where 2,250 square feet is allowed. The original CO for the property was issued in 1961 for a 902 square foot house and carport. A building permit was issued for a detached shed in July of 1963. So the house goes back and has some history. The C of O was issued in 2022 for 92 square foot addition, interior alterations, new doors and windows, and an IA septic system. In November of 2024, a building permit was issued to demolish the existing entryway steps and construct a 35 square foot enclosed entryway. The applicant is seeking a 7-foot variance for a patio that sits just 13 feet from the parcel's north property line. A building permit was issued for the construction of a 176 square foot patio on April 6, 2023. It appears that a concrete slab existed under the location of the new patio as far back as December 1975, and that slab extended approximately as far north as the current patio does. That slab existed at the time of the 2022 C of O was issued. In December of 2023, a building permit was issued for the construction of the pergola, and the requested variance needed for that portion of the patio is increased in size western direction. It is an area of less than 15 square feet. In terms of the various standards to 255-1110, I don't believe this small addition to an existing patio will produce an undesirable effect on the character of the neighborhood or prove to be a detriment to the nearby properties. The patio in question exists to allow for an exterior house door to function comfortably. It's not a prime recreation area associated with the pool. Additionally, I don't feel that the slight extension of the pre-existing patio poses a significant threat to the environment or physical conditions of the neighborhood. What we had here was an extension of a new patio going down over a concrete slab, and it was the extension to the west that triggered the variance needed to the north. So it was a small portion of about 1.5 foot extension to the west that extended about 2/3 of the width of the patio. All of that was in question. I looked at this and said this was not a significant change to the pre-existing layout, the pre-existing C of O layout, and I thought that it was not an exorbitant or unreasonable ask. So I'm willing to approve this application at this time.
Thank you. John, go for it.
I agree with fellow member Johan. I really don't have anything to add. It's a minimal request, and I approve the application in its entirety.
Thank you. Jane?
Oh, sorry, thought Terry was going. Okay, so I spent some time looking at the surveys that were in the file. So, you have the 4/1/2022 survey, showed the house, a small rectangle of concrete, and some gravel just off the back of the house. Then there was a survey 1/10/23 that showed the proposed pool and decking that was approved through building permit 74267. And we can see that what was approved in terms of the layout of the decking around the pool actually bears little relationship to what was actually built by the applicant. And then when the survey that's up on the screen is the survey that shows sort of the as-built conditions. I'm going to deny this variance. Unlike I understand the case of my fellow board members, it's not a tremendous amount of area. However, there were alternatives. Like they could have built what had been approved. They also could have, the applicant made an attempt to say that the patio that attaches to the rear of the house is separated from the pool area. Although our planner was definitive that this is not a separate deck and that it needs the double setback. So because it's separated by these sort of stepping stones, I think we established in the hearing there's only 3 feet. There is certainly an option to expand the break between that patio on the rear of the house and the pool deck. And at the end of the day, in a neighborhood that is one of the densest in town, and where there are other alternatives, I think it's very important to still uphold setbacks, especially, side yard setbacks. So I actually do not see this meeting the standards enough for me to approve this. So I'm going to deny this variance.
Terry?
Yeah, I have a similar track to what Member Meering did. I was also looking at the surveys from 2022, 74267 for putting in the pool. And at that point in time, in 2022, there was no stone patio that was connected to the pool. Then the 2023 is when the pergola on the deck was put in, and that work was done. And somewhere in between there, I believe what happened is the 2022 pool permit, some stone patio was added onto that project thereafter. So somewhere along the way, this stone patio became connected to the pool, making it now all a pool patio, and now requiring the double setback. So I do think there are alternate methods. They put these little stepping stones in, I think, with the thought perhaps that would absolve the double setback. However, it doesn't. They have to be 5 feet away from that. But there are alternate solutions that could be used on this. And this other recent hearing we had about Culloden and the pools and pool patios and the tightness of all the space in Culloden on these small lots, that they could have done other things and separate that patio, the one that we're here for, from the pool patio, and then it wouldn't need a variance at all. So I think there are other solutions for it. I don't think it meets the standards. I too am denying it.
Thank you. I'm going to approve the application in line with what Member Johan laid out. I don't think it's a large, it warrants a denial in this specific case. So with that, I also vote to approve the application. Thank you.
See you soon.
Welcome, Vice Chair. Our next application is Sean Eckert at 11 Rehan Avenue in Montauk, Suffolk, tax map number 300-30-3-10. Size of location is 7,320 square feet, 11 Rehan Avenue, Oceanside of Montauk, map 2730, lot 67 in Montauk. The description is to allow an existing retaining wall, steps, walkway, and fence to remain on a parcel of land within jurisdiction of freshwater wetlands. Relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 and variances from 255-430 of the town code. A variance of 37 feet is required to allow the fence and retaining wall, steps, and walkway 63 feet from a wetland where a 100-foot setback is required and any other relief necessary. Zoning district is B residence, zone flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. I think this is yours.
Okay. Yes, this hearing was held on September 16th, 2025. The agent was Joel Halsey. The survey that we're looking at is dated July 8th, 2024. This required, well, the variance is a state of 37 feet for the fence, retaining wall, steps, and walkway to be 63 feet from the wetlands. This was a disturbing application for me, but a number of things occurred on this property, and the applicant, I'll go into the history of it, I guess, with Joel Halsey said that the reason that some of this occurred is because it was a steeply sloped property to begin with. The original driveway sloped up and went over the actual septic system that's on the property. And the owner got concerned about the integrity of the septic system, not knowing if it could retain weight with cars going in and up and over it. It was a point in time where the garage that was under actually became part of the living space. Most of the garage did. But the owner was still concerned because the septic system was left there, and I guess people were still driving over it. In 2021, the applicant went to the highway department to ask for a solution, I guess, to see if they could put in a retaining wall. They got approval for that, and in 2022, they got a C of O and permit. And then in 2023, they got a permit for the pool, and it was in the inspection after the pool was put in that it became known about the retaining wall, and it had not come to this board for any approvals. So they had done this as a matter of safety, potential safety. Unfortunately, they only went to the highway department, and the agent said they didn't know. They didn't know that they needed to come and do something else, and neither did the highway department, I guess, feel they had to notify anybody. And according to council, I guess they just don't do that. So there was a lot of discussion on this. We can't, as far as the NRSP part of this, the planning department was not that concerned about negative environmental aspects since the wetlands are across the street from the property. They thought maybe there could be some additional runoff, but they didn't have a strong feeling on that at all as being harmful. As far as the variance, I have a concern on the variance. I'm going to approve this application because of the safety issues that were brought up, and only because of that issue. However, the planner said that it's noted for a 37-foot variance to be 63 feet from a wetland, but during the hearing, the planner did break that out, and the 63 feet, the 37 feet is actually off from the property the part of the property that's actually not on the owner's property. It's in the town right of way and purview of the highway department. So I do not want to approve a variance of 37 feet. The planner said that the portion of the wall that is on the applicant's property is 74 feet from the wetland. So I am willing to do a 26-foot variance for that to be 74 feet from the wetlands, but not the 37.
Thank you. Jane?
Okay. So one of the issues that did come up, and council answered my many questions on the record, so we have a situation where the highway department, which has jurisdiction over whether something could or should be in the right of way, made that decision. Their approval of the retaining wall, the documentation that was, I believe, put into the record. So it was approved when we know that really, I think, as we realized it should have come to the board first because it needed variances and an NRSP, but it didn't. So I'm looking at this application more as sort of a mistake in terms of an approval that got the applicant to build the wall. Now, maybe they knew what their wetland setbacks are, but however, just like we look at when building department approves things in error, I'm looking at this in a similar context. In addition, as Member Berger said, and I also take this into account, our planner who wrote the TAM and presented to us did not at all feel strongly and, said that she could not necessarily articulate or quantify what risk this would create to the wetlands. The wetlands, I believe, are actually that these are across the road. And so between not being clear that there would be, per the NRSP standards, the variance standards, I'm not necessarily seeing environmental detriment created by this. I think we had an unfortunate circumstance where the protocols and the sequencing of an application were poor, but those two things together in particular, I will be approving the application in full.
Thank you. Ed?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with my fellow board members. I think they've expressed most of the ideas that I had about this well. I think that when you first come onto the site, it's a little jarring because this wall does extend out fairly close to the road out onto the area that was given approval by the highway department. It did not come into us for any kind of approval, which is unfortunate. But a couple of key things here beyond the shock value of seeing what was there. One of the reasons that was stated for moving it was the driveway and to eliminate the one that did run into the garage before that had crossed the septic tank and they weren't sure of the structural integrity of the tank and they were afraid of that collapsing. That may have been a factor. In the end, I mean, it was a factor to them. I don't know if that was something that we would, we can quantify in any particular way. But I think the wetlands are across the street from the parcel. I think that what was ran up by Member Berger, that although it's noticed as a 67-foot, 67-foot or 64-foot anyway, variance is actually, it's 74 feet. So we're looking at a 26-foot variance, which gets us down close to 25%. I think that's a factor. I think the quote, and I won't read the quote, but it's been mentioned by both members that Our planner did say that it was hard to quantify any particular effects you might have crossing that roadway from a wall that was that far away, might have on the wetlands, would certainly affect. The planning department did not have a strong negative feeling about it. So with no negative effects to be anticipated on the wetlands, and I think that it's, as was said, procedurally, I'd like to see that we had a little better working relationship with the highway department on these sensitive issues, but I'm not sure that that has anything to do with our decision tonight. And I'm going to approve this application based on the fact that I don't think it's going to provide any potential damage, or at least very little potential damage to the environment that's most associated with. And that it is a 25% and not a 35% or 38%, whatever it was, variance request. So I'm approving this application.
Thank you. Vice Chair.
Okay, I'm not going to repeat what's already been said. I don't see them being any negative environmental conditions in the neighborhood. There was, as Member Berger already brought up, a safety issue, but I'm in agreement with my fellow board members, and I'm going to be approving this application.
Thank you. I too am going to approve it. However, I caution on approving it based on a safety issue. I approve it based on the variance request and the other factors. I don't believe it's just the safety app, but there's a number of different reasons why you should be approving this application. The board, are we all in agreement that it's going to be a 26-foot variance, not a variance
Instead of
37, yeah.
31.
instead of 37?
I don't want to approve a variance.
I thought-
That's not on.
We don't, it's not, we don't have the jurisdiction to approve
A variance on.
variance
Wait, what you're saying is the only part that we
on the property.
can approve
Is-
is on the
26.
property.
That's correct.
Oh,
Correct.
okay, so I thought in the hearing, we did say that we did have the jurisdiction to also deny the other variance. So I'm looking at it that way,
But
but
if
that's fine.
is it the variance or is it we don't have the jurisdiction on a variance, but I think the discussion, correct me if I'm wrong, had to do with the NRSP. That we did have, our jurisdiction can go to approving the NRSP part of it. But in all the time, my tenure on the board, we stay within the property line.
Yes.
So that's basically,
Well, that's what I'm basing my decision on.
So it's a 26-foot variance then from
right.
the property.
Morgan,
property.
you agree with that?
Yeah, I believe the board's jurisdiction is just what's within the property limits. I mean, we'll see what happens when it gets to the building department for a CO. If it has to come back for an amendment, the board already discussed it, and
Okay.
that could be a conversation later on if it needs to
Thank you.
happen.
So we're just approving what's on the property. That's
That's
what I'm approving. Okay.
Yeah.
And the fact that there's no negative environmental conditions to the neighborhood.
Now,
Okay.
council, did I give the dates of the survey? Or did I
I think
skip
you
that?
did,
I got the survey.
Survey 7/8/2024, and the agent sent in a submission on 9/8/25, which we received the same day. And a hand-drawn sketch from 12/17/24 on that.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, survey.
Okay, we good? Thank you. Next, we have Jasmine and Ed Emad Khalil at 84 Northwest Road, East Hampton, Suffolk, tax map number 300-91-1-1.7. Size and location is 340,720 square feet, which is 7.82 acres. At 84 Northwest Road, James Dunlop Sr. and Adelaide H. Dunlop, Lot 1, filed October 10th, 2000 as map number 10507 in East Hampton. The description is to allow an existing tennis court to remain within minimum side yard setbacks. Relief sought is one variance of 2.2 feet pursuant to 255-1110 of the East Hampton Town Code is needed to allow the tennis court to remain 47.8 feet from the side yard lot line where 60 feet is required. The zoning district is A5 residence X flood zone and the secret class is type 2. And this was in mine. This hearing also took place on 9/16. And if you remember, it's a very large property, very heavily and densely naturally vegetated screening. The uniqueness to this property, this was an error both in surveying and with the building permit. The state property was staked out off the property line instead of off the accessory building envelope, and the building permit was issued on the same. And as far as the uniqueness of the property to the south is a reserve and a road, which puts the neighboring, the most affected neighbor is the reserve area. And then you have a road, so it puts the neighboring house about 160 feet away from the tennis court. With that, I find that this is a unique situation, and I think it warrants approval based on the fact that there is quite a large, because these double setbacks were created to avoid noise with neighborhoods, with neighboring neighbors. So with that, I vote to approve the application, and I believe it meets all the standards. Jane, you want to go?
Sure, thank you. I agree with our chairman. I'm going to approve this variance for similar reasons. Number one, that the 12.2% variance requested represents a variance of 20% relative to the 60-foot required setback. We recently reviewed a series of approvals that our zoning board had made for, these fairly rare tennis court setbacks. And one of the patterns seemed to be that the approvals were generally for smaller magnitude, around 20-ish%. So I feel like this is in keeping with some of the approvals for tennis court setbacks before, but more importantly, again, I also would cite the uniqueness, and part of that uniqueness is both the mistake in surveying and it not being picked up and corrected, and a mistake of issuance of the building permit. And I don't see it having particularly great impact on neighbors or the character of the neighborhood. This is almost an 8-acre lot, and the most affected property, as has been said, is the reserve. So I'm going to approve this application.
Thank you. Terry?
I don't have much more to add to that. I agree with my fellow board members. Stated there's a reserve area on this property. The nearest neighbor is more than 100 feet away. There's not much more to say. I think it is a unique situation, and the variance is not large. So I too am going to approve this application in its entirety.
Thank you. Ed?
Yeah, there's not a lot to add, but just the same points. Very heavily vegetated lot. The reserve area means that the nearest house, as the chair said, is 160 feet away. I ask myself in these cases, what was the legislative intent? The code's established to try to protect the adjoining neighbors from noise pollution and other kinds of activity that's too close to them. We don't have that here. That gives it uniqueness. I think there was the problem with the survey, but for all the reasons that have been mentioned by fellow board members, I'm in agreement with them. I'm going to approve this application.
Thank you. Vice Chair?
I too agree with my fellow board members. I agree with Chairman Deline that this is a very unique situation with regard to the survey and the building permit. This is not a substantial variance. The tennis court was just constructed to the approving plans, and the neighboring property affected by this is a reserved area. Also, lot coverage, building coverage, and clearing are within the maximum allowable, and it will not cause a detriment to the neighborhood. So I will be approving this application in its entirety.
Thank you. We good, counsel?
Yes.
Next, we have Jason Goldklang at 66 Pepperidge Lane in Amagansett, Suffolk, tax map number 300-127-4-10. Size and location is 84,203 square feet at 66 Pepperidge Lane, Hawks Nest, Section 3, Lot 52, filed March 20th, 1978, as map number 6658 in Amagansett. The description is to construct a screened-in porch, patio, fence, and clear 4,000 square feet of vegetation within the jurisdiction of wetlands. Allow a hot tub, patio, and fire pit to remain within the jurisdiction of wetlands, and to allow a fence to remain within minimum wetland setbacks. Relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the town code, and one variance is required for this application. A variance of 17 feet is needed to allow a fence to remain 83 feet from the wetland where a 100-foot setback is required, and any other relief necessary. Zoning district is A2 residence, X flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. Mary?
Yes, thank you. The public hearing was held on September 16th, 2025. At the end of the hearing, we closed the hearing but left the record open for 1 week until September 23rd in order to receive a response from the applicant regarding a covenant that had been required by a prior board multiple years ago. We had a lot of discussion about whether it should be properly conveyed now. The applicant did come back to us within the time frame of the 23rd and did say that her client, or the applicant's agent came back, that her client was happy to convey that covenant, so that put that and put a rest to that. The applicant was represented by Jameson McWilliams of the Adam Miller Group. The TAM was prepared by Morgan Slater. It was dated August 1, 2025. We did not receive any public comments into the record. Before the hearing began, I think it was a few days before the public hearing date, the applicant decided to remove a substantial, perhaps the most substantial element from their application. There had been a proposal to clear an additional 4,000 square feet of woodlands on steep slopes, I think on the western part of the existing developments, the existing development on the property. That change, the change to what was noticed for the hearing is also reflected on the updated Gary Benz survey dated August 6, 2025, which, so that came in like not that long before the hearing, but it was discussed at the public hearing and uploaded into the public file on 8/20. With respect to the 4 existing elements that are seeking to be legalized, those were all built by prior owners of the property and existed at the time the applicant purchased the property. The other 3 elements they want to add that also require variances in NRSP are proposed to be within already disturbed sort of existing building and total coverage areas of the property. Aside from the steep slopes and woodlands on the property, it's a beautiful wooded area overall of Amagansett and in town. This parcel is also distinguished by a wetland area on the southern quadrant of the property, sort of between the entrance to the driveway and the house that's set back. And there's a scenic easement that had been placed across that wetland, I think at the time of the original building permit. And that easement visually appears to be, the scenic easement, excuse me, appears to be intact. So I just wanted to note that. I'm going to come back to at the end, but I noticed that on the survey that the scenic easement is marked, but it actually seems it's not covering the whole wetland. I'll come back to that. And if you look at the sketch for it in the public hearing file, it was shifted a little differently, but I'll come back to that. One of the elements, a portion of the existing fencing requires a modest 17% variance to the minimum wetland setback. Everything else, I believe in this application, is outside of the required 100-foot wetland setbacks. Removing the proposed area of significant new clearing of native trees on the slopes was an important development, and And I'm happy it had been removed because it was not clear to me it actually comported with the NRSP standards. Considering all the elements of the application in total relative to the NRSP standards under 255-551 and 255-540, and the variance standards under 255-850, and that the applicant will formalize the covenant established by the prior ZBA, I believe the elements meet all of those standards. I'm not going to go through each element one by one, but overall the variances requested for the existing fence is not substantial, and I do not find that any of the other elements in the application to be material or will cause any detriment to the environment, to the natural features of the site, to the neighboring properties, or the character of the neighborhood. And overall, I note that all the improvements on the property remain fairly tightly clustered on the lot, and given the wooden nature of the surroundings are not particularly visible from the road. There's no expansion really going on everything. They're actually removing a few things to offset some of the legalization. And so also I'd note that the clearing will remain unchanged at 23.4% of the lot, which is meaningfully below the maximum of 36.9%. And the building coverage and total coverage ratios remain virtually unchanged. And both of those are really only a fraction of what maximums are permitted. So all in, I'm looking to approve this application. And I guess I would like to clarify that scenic easement position, but I'll leave that to the end.
Thank you. Terry?
Okay, I agree with my fellow member. Ken. It's an interesting application. The biggest problem for me also before the hearing actually occurred was the additional clearing that had been requested, and that was removed by the applicant. We received that by the time the hearing started. Jameson did some sketches on the board to show how the fencing was going to be changed and removed, some added but in order to complete the pool fencing and eliminating some of the other fencing that was within NRSP territory. They're moving, there's a hot tub, and part of the project that they would remove some of the stones between the hot tub and the fire pit, mostly because the hot tub would require a double setback as a pool, and so that is addressed. Talked about the original residents and the covenant for the lack of clearing, and they did provide the okay that the applicant would do that. So I do think that this meets all the standards for the NRSP and for this one variance for the fencing. I feel it meets the standards. It's a minor variance. It's not going to cause any harm, and minimum variance required. I think that I'm approving this application in its entirety.
Thank you. Ed?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with my fellow board members on this one as well, but I'll make a couple of points that they've already been made, but this is what influenced my thinking. A very wooded lot, that proposed clearing area that was shocking when we first went there was withdrawn before we actually had to consider it. So that was plus. I think we went from coming into the hearing anticipating possibly having to wrestle with 4,000 additional cleared square feet, from that to getting the covenant, which was required from an earlier time. But the fact is that the client did not in any way try to recoil from that. So we go from potentially arguing over or discussing cleared land to having a covenant to protect that very land and of course, a good deal of the rest of that very pitched slope. I thought that these other improvements were all 112, 108, 100 feet away. The removal of the stone, which took away the double setback condition over on the far side there between those couple of other elements, the fire pit and whatnot. I thought the reconfiguration of the fence was one that worked conveniently for them to have a little more room, but it was creative enough that it didn't change things significantly. It was two small little returns with gates in them that had to happen there to make it happen, to make it work. I didn't think the fence represented any kind of large, and all the porch improvements were insignificant. I didn't think that the planning department had any real problems with it. I think there was uniqueness to the lot in terms of the wetlands that existed on it, but that we made an effort and we're coming out of this to protect them a little better than they were when we came in. So I'm willing to approve this application at this time.
Thank you. Vice Chair.
I agree with my board members. All the proposed structures are not expected to have any long-term environmental impacts on the wetland. As everybody, I was concerned about the removal of the 4,000 square feet of revegetation. I'm happy to see that has been removed from the project because this will benefit the wetland and minimize stormwater runoff and impact to soils stability. The proposed final limits of clearing are 23,590 square feet, where 31,050 square feet is the maximum allowable. So I do feel this meets the NRSP and variance standards, and I will be approving the application.
Thank you. I too agree with my fellow board members, and I don't have anything else to add. Thank you. We next have
Wait, I'm sorry, can I just resolve this thing on the scenic easement? Is that okay? Because I'm wondering if it's a mistake on the survey, because the scenic easement must have been established relative to the sketches that were in the record. And what's depicted on the survey looks odd. I know, I mean, there's enough in the record. I hope I'm not trying to make a new record here, but it sort of just jumped out at me again, like why the easement is there, I guess, in terms of size, but it seems like it's positioned strangely relative to the wetland.
But is the easement already established?
The easement was.
Yeah, I know it was
It's already
established,
so that's
but if
illegal.
you looked at the sketches that like were in the, whatchamacallit, the,
Right, but as far as an easement goes, that is established by surveying and meets and bounds and all that, just like a
Okay.
property line. So that's legal. It's already filed.
yeah, it
Filed.
just didn't,
The wetlands
never
must-
matched
the
what
wetlands
was
moved.
Yeah.
asked of
Right.
them, so.
Yes,
Wetlands moved.
the wetland was redelineated.
Oh, the wet, oh, I didn't, okay, so that's the old scenic easement and now,
Flagging on the surveys.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
guess had I noticed that, I.
Easement's much older than
Yeah,
that. So.
got it.
Actually on the survey, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have MV Realty Group Core at 315 Gerard Drive in Spring, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-64-2-14. Size and location is 38,025 square feet at 315 Gerard Drive in Springs. The description is to allow the continued reconstruction of a residence with approximately 630 square feet of decking and add 2 second-story dormers on a parcel of land containing dune land, breaches, and located within the town's jurisdiction of freshwater wetlands. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 and variances from 255-430, 255-440 coastal setbacks, and any other relief necessary. The following variances are required. Variances of 29 feet and 43 feet are required to reconstruct the residence and decking 71 feet and 57 feet from wetlands where a 100-foot setback is required. Variances of 38 feet and 55 feet are required to construct the residence and decking 62 feet and 45 feet from the landward edge of the beach where a 100-foot setback is required. And a 47.4-foot variance is required to install the sanitary system 102.6 feet from wetlands where 150-foot setback is required. Zoning district is A2, residence AE, flood zone, elevation 9, the secret class is type 2. Vice Chair, I believe this was in yours.
Yes, it was. Thank you. The public hearing was held on September 16th, 2025. The survey prepared by George Walbridge, survey loss revised 8/30/24, dated received 9/26/24. The plans for additions and alterations to the residence are prepared by WJG Architects, dated 4/12/2014, dated received 9/26/24. Pages are 2, A1 and A2. No letters in the digital file from the public, and no one from the public participated during the public hearing. Oh, my God. There were no callers. Eric Brown was the attorney. Does somebody have a lifesaver? Something happens to me in this
I
room.
don't know if the minty thing is.
Eric Brown was the attorney who appeared on behalf of the application, along with Shannon McCaffrey. Brian Frank appeared on behalf of the planning department. When I asked, how does a demolition and reconstruction project begin without the benefit of a building permit, Eric Brown explained. I apologize, I'm sorry. There's something happens to me in this room.
I think at this end of the bench.
There was water damage to the original house in the winter and pipes froze. Applicant went to the insurance company and filed a claim, was paid to have repairs done, while never really getting proper permits. So they're now here trying to rectify a mistake since a stop work order was issued. I did ask, will the height in any way change involving a pyramid? I was told no. There's no increase in the footprint. And I appreciated that explanation. The footprint will not increase, and there will be a septic system upgrade. The dwelling is compliant with FEMA. The applicant has agreed to all the mitigation being proposed, one of which is to establish a scenic easement seaward of the landward edge of the beach as depicted on the planning department sketch. The shed is going to be removed, and the outdoor shower was legally built and is on the CO. Concrete piers have always been there, and they are only adding dormers to get headroom on the second floor, which total 126 square feet. I believe the NRSB, sorry, the alternative reasonable uses of the property do not exist. They are not working within the pre-existing legal structures that exist. They are working within the pre-existing legal structures that exist on the property. There will be no negative impacts to the project as a result of this project. The septic system upgrade will be an environmental plus, and there will be no disturbance or disruption to the natural resources or resources. So for these reasons, I'm going to be approving this application
Thank you.
in its entirety.
Yes, I've got to say that in the time I'm on the board, it's one of the most shocking first sights when I went to see this one. This building that was propped up the way it was, and the siding is gone, and I wasn't quite sure what we were getting ourselves into, and I thought it was going to be a lot more difficult than it was to come to some sort of decision here. There does require an NRSP and 5 variances. They made a mistake starting the demo without permits. That's obvious, and that was admitted by the applicant's representatives. There are no variants needed for pyramid on this one or height, so those are 2 positives with something that's been brought up on these constrained lots and trying to come to FEMA standards. I guess one of the things before I go through what made up my mind is I climbed under that house and was quite certain that the concrete I saw was new. They said it wasn't, that it had been there before. I went back and looked at the building plans because I thought for sure I was going to see a detail, and that was all new work that was misrepresented. But in the building plans, it does say pre-existing concrete piers exist in all those locations that are there. It also said that the beam work that was there, I will only say that is not before us, that work had to have happened sometime between the original cottage and when it came in front of us for the renovation. However, that was something to think about. There was what was mentioned at the hearing by the vice chair, that this piece of PVC shooting off into outer space that turns out being part of the original or the pre-existing septic system. There were a couple of the things that influenced my decision-making on this is that the only addition that they're doing here from pre-existing footprint is to add these 2 small dormers in areas that already had previous use. As was mentioned, that's a total of 126 square feet. It does change the GFA calculations, but it does not change substantially the existence of the structure and how it's going to represent itself in that area. The first floor elevation is 11'9". They mentioned on a previous survey as 12'9". That just accounts for whether you take the elevation from below or above the first floor framing. So that deck was probably, that's the answer there. It does meet, it is FEMA compliant by having it in that area like that. I think that They talked about controlling the storm runoff that we didn't have in the previous one with gutters and leaders. We would have required that. The new IA system, of course, but it's in its best possible location, so that was deemed to be a positive. There was a shed to be removed. Let me see. Oh, yeah, all the suggested mitigation from Brian Frank was adopted. I said the IA is in its best possible location. House will meet all FEMA regulations. Those are all positive. Easement to the water that was established, that was mentioned by the vice chair, is 19,000 square foot of easement space between the front of Gardner's Bay and back to a line that's like 75 feet back from wetlands. There was also a 1,600 square foot buffer along the Sea Hall line, just north of the Sea Hall line, that was voluntarily agreed to. And the existing vegetation by Brian Frank was deemed to be adequate in most areas. I think that we know that in Girard Drive, not only do we take it sensitively, Mr. Frank takes it very seriously. And I thought that his attitude was that this is one of the better potential and solutions to development along Girard Lane. I think it is a better outcome to have this house renovated in place, in kind, more or less in kind, but without changing a footprint, than a potential redevelopment that might come in front of us. We have a certain amount of disturbance there that's already established. We know that finishing up a renovation is going to be a lot less impactful on the property than a whole new construction. So as shocking as I first found this, I think that it was a very kind of well thought out application, in the sense that they offered the mitigation that we were looking for, that the planning department was looking for. And I think that we're going to see a benefit on the property in terms of an IA system, protection for the wetland, and not being asked to approve a house that's larger or more disturbing than the one that already exists. So I'm willing to approve this application.
Thank you. Jane?
Yes, thank you. I remember when the hearing kicked off and our vice chair said, "How can this happen?" And I felt similarly. There was sort of a shock to, right, how could this happen? And also, you know, it was very jarring to have an applicant come before us, while at the same time, and we talked about this in the hearing a bit, you know, have a active real estate ad up that, you know, encourages expand the space, let your imagination run wild. However, as a zoning board member, no matter what my chalk or any of those things, I'm charged only with looking at the application before us and assessing it on its merits only. If this application had come to us in proper order and timing prior to starting work, I do believe I would have approved it, as it appears to meet NRSP standards, the standards for the wetland and edge of beach variances required, as well as the one setback for the septic system. The house and decking has been on, has been on the site, the variances site for some time. I can't remember what year it was built, but the house has been there for quite a while. The variances reflect the setbacks that reflect the existing house, because this is a rebuild, replace, in place and in kind for the most part. As was mentioned, there are two dormers that add basically a de minimis amount of GFA or mass to the house, and they don't require any height or pyramid variances or anything like that. The improvements of a septic, I do believe in this case the septic is likely mitigation, because the house is not expanding a lot. There's a 19,000 square foot, I think that was the number, 18 to 19,000 was estimated, scenic easement, a revegetated buffer on the landward side of the house, and the house, as mentioned, is already FEMA compliant. These are all very important factors in my deliberation relative to the NRSP standards as well as the variance standards. With respect, so I don't think there's any alternative to those variances, again, because they're keeping the structure. I agree with my fellow board member, especially member Johan just said this, you know, we know Girard Drive is one of the most fragile and vulnerable places in all of town, and it is a very good outcome, I believe, to keep the house in its size and scale relative to, you know, changes in that area and the character of it. So all in, I am approving the application. I guess I wanted to ask what member Johan brought up in terms of those piers looking new. I guess it would go to the building department really, right, to assess their structural integrity. So I don't think we have to make any kind of condition of that. It'll just, right, it should be, hopefully it will be looked at closely. And if they were to need to do something different, they'd have to come back to us,
There are
right?
stamp plans, that's
Yeah.
what they're going to rely on.
Great, okay, that's it for me, thank you.
Terry?
I'd like to, I'm going to approve this application for all the same reasons we already heard. The water damage, it was a bad start, I guess, on this, but when they have the stop work order, the fact that, you know, the variances are going to be exact, the house is in the same footprint, so everything's the same, except for the dormers that have been mentioned many times before. There are a lot of pluses on this. I don't know that the sanitary is mitigation for me. It is a redevelopment, but regardless, there's a sanitary system going in. The planning department, once again, a 19,000-foot scenic easement, a 25-foot buffer on the west, encompassing about 1,600 square feet with woody revegetation. The sanitary has been sited in the best possible location. And one thing that Brian Frank did bring up, and I guess this would be more in the DEC permit area. He mentioned that it's possible it could be a nesting place for plovers and other shorebirds. So there might be a condition on the shorebird window, but I guess that will be handled with the DEC permit.
Or should we put them in
Or
anyway?
do we need to put something in about that?
I don't think we're qualified to do that. I think that would be a planning department thing, or recommendation, or a DEC
And
thing.
the DEC, I think,
Yeah, I
will
don't.
cover that, right?
Right.
Okay, but
Planning
it was
raised
brought
it to
up.
us, right? Planning did raise it to us.
Yeah, yeah. Does meet FEMA, and we talked about a drywall for the shower, but Brian thought was totally unnecessary because it's on sand. And that's about it. It's all good. Hopefully it will be all good when it's done. And I too am approving this application.
Thank you. I too think that the optics and initial viewpoint on this thing was not positive, but with adjudicating cases, we do have to enter this with an open mind and look at the facts, and this is a model case of showing that why we need to do that, in my opinion. But also with that, I say that when you do have, and it happens all the time every winter in this place where we do have freeze-ups and water damage, and there needs to be a provision somehow for the removal of the bad materials in a quick manner. However, it does appear that they went a little bit beyond that scope in the demolition on this thing, so I think the stop work order was warranted in this case. However, when you do look at the facts of this case as it stands, it's a good application ultimately, and I too agree with my board members in approving the application.
To answer, there was a condition in the TAM for a strict moratorium on construction activities between March 15th and August 30th to protect the shorebird species. That was in the TAM.
I thought that, I was going
Yeah.
to bring up, is it in the summary? Yeah.
And
To that.
the
They
agent
accepted
did
all,
accept
they
all the.
accepted all the
Yeah, that will be in
mitigation.
the,
Yeah.
Yes,
in the determination.
that'll be in the, yeah, okay, good.
One question I have for the board is, I get the scenic easement, that's for the buffer. So they're gonna need to do a re-veg plan for the planning department.
Yeah,
But is that just gonna be a buffer? There's not an easement over it, like, there's just
Yeah.
a buffer? They're just gonna get a
Just a
re-veg
buffer.
plan? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we asked that
Just the
question, I
buffer
I
think.
think we did answer that
and then
question.
I just
naturalizing
wanted to
over
I
the
wanted to
sandy.
confirm. All right, so just a re-veg plan that will get approved by the planning department.
I think, Brian, Frank also asked for beach grass to be planted over the disturbed area for the sanitary.
Correct, and they agreed to it. The next two cases, I was not here, so I'm going to ask the vice chair to step in my position and our alternate John Morrison to come on up.
Can I have two of those so I can get through
Do they
this
help
without
though?
coughing?
Just the mint sometimes makes
Something
it more-
happens to me in this room. I don't know what it is. Okay, let me just coat my throat.
Here, you want to open it?
Happens all of a sudden. Okay, so the next application is Janice Wilson, 1 Gladstone Place, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-19-2-50.3. Project description is to allow a parcel to remain 2,064 square feet over the allowable clearing limits of the Water Recharge Overlay District. Relief sought, 1 variance from 255-365 of the Town Code is required to allow 12,064 square feet of clearing to remain where 10,000 square feet is a maximum allowable, and any other relief necessary. Zoning district is A, residence zone X, flood zone, secret class, type 1. Now, whose is this?
What is mine?
Okay, Member Berger.
Okay. So this hearing was also September 23rd? I believe?
Yes.
Oh, it did write it down, okay. And the agent for the applicant was Janice Shearer, and we had latest survey reference was May 30th, 2024, which we received stamped on June 14th, 2024. The applicant submitted the application along with a series of exhibits, which were dated June 13th, 2024, which we received on the same day. She also submitted an EAF Part 1 dated October 1st, which we received on October 7th, 2024. Okay, the applicant, this is for overclearing, allow a parcel to remain 2,064 square feet over the allowable clearing limits for Water Recharge Overlay District. The applicant, and this is the original and the current owner, residence was built in 1993. The C of O, I guess permit or CO number I have written here, 12171 for a 1-story residence with the attached garage. The original survey for this property is dated July 6, 1993, and does not contain clearing calculations on it. The clearing regulations were established by that time in 1984. The next activity on this property after all these years was in 2022, the building permit 73827 to install a generator to accommodate ailments for her husband that needed the generator. The survey done for this, right down.
I don't have my packet.
Yeah, hang on.
I have it. Want me to get it out? Survey?
Survey for the, no, I don't need to look at it, but just the date of it. The survey was done for, I guess, 73827 is the building permit to install the generator. I guess that's good enough. And it was when the applicant went for the C of O for the generator addition, which was also put in an area that had already been cleared on her property, that the overclearing issue came up. There's a number of things on this that make me very sympathetic with the applicant in this case. We have her exhibits, and there was a lot of confusion, if you remember, on this, whether she was just offering the amount of revegetation that showed on the survey to bring the clearing down to 12,000.
12,064.
64, yeah. And then she was discussing when the agent was up there and the applicant was up there about 1313, revegetation to be done. And there was confusion initially that, well, I might still have some confusion, but whether she was offering the 1313 in addition to the amount that was in the notice on the, in the public notice, or if she was just wanting to do 1313. And I believe there's still, if we look at her exhibits, I believe she was actually saying there was a hardship for her to go beyond the 1313. And a lot of it revolved around, well, they're going to ask me to put in big trees, or are these going to be little plants? I can do some things, but not a huge amount. She had, there was the revegetation that's on the survey, the current survey that's up there, indicated, I guess, that there was some kind of a plan from James Grime, because his name is on there. So I actually am sympathetic to her, and I want to bring out some of the items that she had in her submission. At the time of the hearing, there was her agent kept waving a document that we couldn't see from here, but actually it's in her exhibit. It's Exhibit 4, I believe, on it, and it shows. Now, the applicant said that she discussed this with that she was shown this with the planner, and it's a very bad aerial, but on it, it does say approximate clearing 13,000. And then when the survey got done for this application, that one, the clearing shows as 14,000. So it created, well, she was concerned about that, and I know she came in saying that she would do this revegetation, and then we were trying to get more additional revegetation, but however, I'm not approving anything to go for additional, but I'm concerned, I will approve it as this is with the 2254. However, I also feel that maybe we should increase her actual clearing. And I know that's odd, but in her narrative, get to her narrative, she did write this paragraph, the conditions on the lot changed little, which we know they have changed little. There were no other structures put on this except for a tiny pond and a couple of gardens, which are actually a good thing. But the conditions, she said, now indicates my property has 14,318 square feet of clearing, which exceeds the 10,000. She respectfully request that the zoning board grant an increase in the allowable clearing from 10,000 square feet to 13,000 square feet, matching the 1994 aerial that her agent was showing us that night, which is in her documentation. She said the benefit of that as a property owner will outweigh a burden to health, safety, and welfare suffered by the community. But so she's asking, revegetation, Exhibit 5 is being offered, and then that revegetation that she was offering, Exhibit 5. Yes, okay, is the survey that shows the 2,064 over clear, or 12,064 over. So there's still, in my mind, some confusion as to whether she was offering the additional 13 or not. But her statement, I don't know, I'm sympathetic to her statement that this property, as we see it, is unique in that it comes to us with no other structures that have been built that caused the overclearing situation. There was obviously confusion, and in the records of the town, there was no clearing on her original survey from 1994. And everything on her property is planting. She did admit to clearing a little additionally, but it was all in planting gardens. And in water recharge overlay, I mean, having that, all these things on her property contribute to this root system, so everything contributes to the water recharge. And this, in all my time on the board, this is only the second application that I've heard that is a similar situation where the applicant planted, maybe they planted ornamentals, they weren't what counts toward the revegetation that the town does. And a similar situation in that the clearing was not on that applicant's survey either. So I think out of deference to this applicant, I'm considering that maybe we should give her the additional clearing allowed to bring it up to the 13,000. But minimally, I will approve as it was on the notice for the car on the survey.
you're
And this
approving
22.
so you're approving
I'm
the application.
approving this as is. I'm also saying we should consider to take into consideration her hardship statement of the $28,000 that she got in the bid for revegetation and actually allow her the 13,000 because of from 1993 till now, nothing was added. All these other over clearing applications we get have been filled with pools and patios and stone and all kinds of other structures. And this woman, she did not do this. So I would like us to consider that.
Member Mary?
Yes, thank you. Whoops, I lost my place here. Okay. So 255-360 describes the purpose of the water recharge overlay district. I won't read the whole thing, but just the key phrase, there's a water recharge overlay in order to help ensure the continued sufficiency and purity of the town's irreplaceable groundwater supply and sole source of drinking water. And needless to say, clearing is an important element. How much clearing you have is an important element that has to do with water recharge and things like that. I want to rebut one thing with respect to the water recharge area that the applicant asserted in their documentation. They referred to the 10,000 square foot limit in a water recharge overlay as, what's the word? Without reason, without good cause. And I really have to disagree with it. These minimums were established the code says this, in order to give the landowner ample room for residents, accessory structures, while preserving the native habitat so essential for water recharge. So I think it was important to address, one of the cases they made arbitrary. There's nothing arbitrary here. We have a complication, as I see it in this application, comparing what was presented by the applicant and her agent the evening of the actual public hearing, and comparing that to the application that is formally submitted by the applicant into the record, specifically, and has been noticed to the public. As we know, specifically the application noticed and submitted proposed revegetation of 2,254 square feet. That would still leave the property to over 2,000 square feet, quote, over cleared, and requiring about a 20% variance to the maximum clearing allowance. However, at the public hearing, the applicant indicated that they only want to revegetate 1,313 square feet, or 58% of what is noticed in the actual application. Now they are basing this on a town-supplied aerial of the lot from 1994 that they submitted in Exhibit 4. And though it is very hard to read and quite blurry, it's clear on the town document that says approximate clearing in 1994 was 13,000. If we were to approve that, that would be a 30% variance. In addition, the planner during the hearing proposed another 1,170 feet of revegetation along part of the northern property line to basically restore some understory under mature series of existing trees. I always take into account what our planners recommend. In this case, before I get to how I'm signing this application, that is not something that I'm going to look to ask for or require. I am willing to grant the variance with respect to what is noticed in the application. Sorry?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
No, I am willing to approve and grant the variance as stated in the noticed application. So that would be for the 2,254 square feet that brings the clearing to 12,064. I believe this variance request meets the standards of variances. The grant of the variance, I don't believe, will cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. The variance at 20%, I mean, it's substantial because it's over clearing in a water recharge area. However, it's 20%, and the TAM did have a series of applications where the board granted some over clearing in a water recharge, really in the last 5 or 6 years. And the TAM notes each of these applications are unique in their history, parcel size, and existing conditions. So comparing them to each other is not very straightforward. Each application should be examined individually to determine the most appropriate action for each individual case. And so that's, don't know the size of those variances in all those cases, but there is some precedent for approving a variance. And I think the very specific uniqueness of this lot helps warrant it. I don't think that the grant of the variance will have some incremental adverse effect on the conditions because it appears this clearing, over clearing relative to 10,000 has been there for decades. And also I agree with Member Berger, right? Although the property is considered over cleared, there still is not any large degree of hardscape, impervious surfaces, right? The coverage is only around 4,000 square feet, well below the minimum allowed. And was the area variance self-created? In a way, not really, because it's been there for so long. Also, they became aware of it because there was a CO inspection related to the generator. And one of the other things the applicant said is there's no nexus between the generator and this amount of mitigation. I actually don't think that's the correct interpretation. We're not asking this as mitigation for the generator. This is to correct, just as being asked to correct an outstanding over clearing issue. So all in, I'm willing to approve this application. I think it meets the standards. I'm not quite there to grant something of greater clearing at that 1313. I also heard the hardship. They said it was $7 to $8 per square foot was the quote they got. And then what they really did say was to restore it all the way to 10,000 square feet of clearing would cost between 28,000 and 32. So I understand there's some hardship there, but that's as far as I want to go.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was
Member
just trying
Johan?
to formulate the right words. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so this wasn't involved, obviously, listening to discussion from my previous two board members here. This was an involved hearing in terms of trying to define exactly how we and the planning department look at cleared area and a water recharged overlay district. We take that seriously. Water recharge overlay districts are something that have taken a lot of our attention on many, many sites. I think we go right to the numbers that have been discussed by the previous two board members, both Member Meering and Member Berger. We have a cleared number of 14,318 square feet where 10,000 is allowed. The TAM suggested that the offer was for 2,254 feet. The applicant then corrected that to say they're really only offering 1,313, and that would not bring it down to what the TAM had suggested. The 2,254 would take it down to 12,064, increasing it by a significant amount. However, that's when the discussion got a little muddy, because what were we talking about? What was the square area? One thing I was never comfortable with is the gray area on the photo we have, or on the map, the survey we have, was supposedly clouded in from a plan from James Grimes planning, landscape planning. I don't know what that square area is. Now they're suggesting it's 1313. It looks like it's more than that to me, but either way, if that's what's offered at 1313, one of the things that came up, Sarah Lewis suggested, the planner suggested at the meeting, there was room on the north side of the lot underneath where there's some mature euonymus that were pointed out by Member Berger the night of the hearing that exists there that could get planted. When I asked, how do we define, what do we have for areas that if they have vegetation, but they're not considered, considered cleared because they're ornamental or they're mature. That led to some confusion, I think, on the part of the applicant. The applicant said bringing in big woody trees, bringing these expense. I think I suggested that night, I think it's a suggestion now, if we can move forward, that any kind of replanting, they have to sit down with the planning department to get a real definition of what has to be done on a site like this. I have the same sense of sympathy for the woman that my fellow board members have. However, I do think that I would not retreat anywhere further from it getting to see at least 2,254 feet that was mentioned in the TAM. That'll take us down to the 12,000 foot mark. Now, that's still 2,000 over where we should be. However, I will say, again, agreeing with my board members, this is largely a lot that is covered in vegetation. There's not a lot of hardscape been added. Not 4 little buildings have been added. There's not a tennis court that's been added. There's not things that we're looking at that we say are going to significantly change it. However, we still have to come back to the definition by the planning department of what is cleared area. So there's the crux of our problem here. We have something that's going to drain fairly well. It's got vegetation on it. Not all of it is acceptable by definition of how we define cleared area. I'm willing to go through all that muddle, to think all through it, to have sympathy for them, to understand the conditions that we hear, to realize that it was kicked off only by the, as they frustrate, and the frustration said, you know, this has got all this cost over an air conditioner. Well, of course, as was mentioned by Member Meering, it has nothing to do with over the air conditioner. It has to do with the over clearing that has existed. I don't know what to make of the aerial photo. I don't know how accurate that is. I know it goes back a long way. And I think it coordinates fairly closely with the purchase of the property by the current owner. So that's something that they felt they could take it back to something like when they first took possession. Mm-hmm. That's a nice concept for them, not necessarily for us looking at to do the best thing we can for water recharge. So I'm going to stay with, I'd like to see that plan implemented there, and with the recommendation that was made by our planner, Sarah Lewis, that additional planning be done underneath without having to remove that. Some in consultation, let this applicant sit down with our planning department and decide what kind of planting can go on to create another 1,000 feet, which will take us down. The total will be someplace like the 2,200 and will take us down to something like 12,000. That's a solution.
So you're saying, so I'm clear on what you're saying, because I'm kind of on the same page. If we go along with Sarah Lewis's mitigation,
right,
that would literally bring it down to 10,900 square feet.
I'm not, we have to know.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
But I just want to go back to say that when that suggestion that was in there of the 2,254 has been contested by the applicant, who says that they are willing to come up with 1313. And if I add 1,070 from Sarah's suggestion, that's only taking us up around 2,500 off of the 12 5. So we're not going to get ourselves down to 10,000.
Well, that's
We are
survey.
if we go along with Sarah Lewis's recommendation.
That's just, go ahead. That's assuming, but that's assuming that the James Grimes drawing here represents 2,254
It's on
square
the
feet.
survey.
Right, that's what's
I
on
mean,
the survey.
That's what's on the survey.
So it does, I mean, we have
So
to
that's
assume
the
the survey is correct.
2254, to bring it down to about 12,000.
But
All
11,000.
right, all right.
Okay, so
what are
I'm
you
going to stay where I'm at. I'm going to say,
So are you
what I see
approving or
there,
not? What do you-
plus that, I want to see, my approval would be based on recommending that Sarah's recommendation for the additional planting area in that area of the maturing euonymus, without causing the expense of having to take them out, some compromise be made in there for them to learn how to plant that out. So I'm basing my approval on the James Grimes plan and the additional recommendation by Sarah Lewis. The numbers will have to be worked out exactly, but we can take of what's in the drawing, we can take of what's in the TAM, but that's what I'm willing to do.
It's 10,894.
Correct, that's what it would go down to. But the applicant, it's good we're discussing this. The applicant's agent was not amenable to that plan.
Right.
So, yeah, but, you
And she had
know,
good reasons.
we can turn around and approve it based on Sarah's
Conditioned on approval of that,
recommendation.
conditioned
Okay,
on
okay,
approval
I
of
just
that
want to be
plan.
clear where you are, because I'm going, okay, go ahead. Member first.
Hi, yeah, just to repeat, at the risk of repeating what's been said, the nexus for this variance is not the installation of a generator. The generator kicked off the survey that noticed that the lot had been overcleared. And as the planning department mentioned, the clearing cannot be considered pre-existing non-conforming, as the lot was vacant before the clearing regulations went into effect in 1984. So as part of the variance the application that we have in front of us, that the owner has proposed revegetating 2,254 square feet, maybe. This then would leave the lot overcleared by 2,064 square feet. Right now, the lot is overcleared by 43%, which I think is very significant. What was offered in the application would leave it 21% overcleared. What Sarah Lewis proposed would bring the overclearing down to about 9%, which would be a total of 10,894 square feet, which is what Member Johan discussed. What is salient to me is that the lot is in a water recharge overlay district with surface water directly feeding into Montauk's indigenous aquifer. And as the TAM states, protecting the town's sole source aquifer is very important and is precisely why there are stricter clearing regulations in water recharge overlay districts. A high bar should be set for allowing clearing to exceed the maximum in this important area of the town, which is vital to the protection of its sole source aquifer. I am in concurrence with the town planning department recommendation that this lot be revegetated to the maximum extent possible, short of demolishing a portion of the existing residence. There is a portion of the property along the northern property line, which was identified by Sarah Lewis, where additional revegetation of 1,170 square feet could be accomplished. It's also feasible to convert some of the existing gravel parking area to revegetation. So applying the town code standards found in 255-850 governing our determinations, I find that whether granting the variance will cause an undesirable change in the neighborhood character or a detriment to the nearby property, thinking cumulatively, every square foot of land that maximally filters rainwater contributes to and sustains the health of the aquifer it sits above, and therefore benefit those who depend upon it for drinking water. Denying or conditioning the approval of this variance will cause a desirable change to the neighborhood and nearby properties. This vital yet invisible shared resource is susceptible to the tragedy of the commons, whereby each small degradation accumulates to the loss of the whole. Whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method, yes, revegetation of the planning department approved proposal of the additional 1170 square feet and what the TAM lays out as the 2,254 square feet. Whether the request of the variance is substantial, as it's overcleared now, it is very substantial, and allowing 2,064 square feet, which represents 21% beyond what is allowed, I believe is significant. Whether the grant will have an adverse effect on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood, I believe that denying or conditioning the approval of this variance will cause a desirable change to the environmental condition for all those who depend upon this aquifer for the drinking water. And it seems to me that the majority of the overclearing occurred before the current owner built the house, with some clearing occurring afterwards. So it's not largely not self-created. So I condition my approval, as Member Johan did, upon the additional revegetation of 2,254 square feet and the 1170.
That's Sarah Lewis proposed.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, aren't we supposed to be making a secret
We
determination?
will. Let's get through the
Yeah,
decision
okay.
first.
So I condition my approval on the total remaining clearing being 10,000, I think it's 894.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bring it home.
I know. I mean, I agree with Member Johan and Member Thorson. I really feel that the water recharge overlay district standards really have to be held high. And these clearing regulations went into effect in 1984. So this is not a pre-existing non-conforming situation. I'm actually not in favor of overclearing and exceeding the maximum allowed. Protection of the town's sole source aquifer is crucial and key to our community, and I think limiting clearing amounts will reduce impacts from runoff. So Sarah, the night of the public hearing, gave her presentation about what her sketch would involve, and as Member Thorson and Member Johan have already stated, that would bring us down to reduced clearing of 10,894, which would be much more in keeping with what I would approve. I think the closer we get to as much limits as we can on clearing, the better. So if we're going to condition and if we're going to approve this application, then the only way I can approve it is based on us going down to the 10,894 square feet. If that's the case, if that's the direction we're going in, then I would approve it based on that condition being part of my approval. So it sounds like we're all in agreement.
No, I'm not in agreement.
All right, so what is it?
So we're in
Is this a
agreement.
3-2?
Yeah, I think so.
Sounds like a 3-2.
But how do we?
Well, wait, I'm not denying,
denying.
not denying the application.
But we're approving it based on the numbers that bring us down to 10,894. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Okay, so
Okay, and I want
we
to
have
approve
three
it
of
as
us
it was,
are, so, you
as the
know.
relief was requested is what I'll approve.
Okay, so
So
Charlie.
I'm
you
only
make a note of that?
I'm approving what the application is noticed. I do not agree that I believe in this particular case, unique circumstances, that extra 1,000, whatever it is necessary. So yes, I think we're all unanimous before let's leave the condition aside. We're all unanimous on wanting to approve the application as noticed and as presented to us. But two of us are dissenting
Okay,
on,
and three of us
right.
Yeah,
are
so,
conditioning it
Right.
upon,
so, yeah, we're approving it, the drawings and the additional.
correct.
Three people are.
Three people are, and two are approving the,
It has that in it.
well, everyone's approving it. Everyone's approving this.
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
Three people are approving this.
three of us are
Conditioning,
approving
yeah.
both.
For both. And we'll approve it if.
Condition.
That's
Condition. Okay.
additional mitigation.
That's the only way I'll approve it, is if we
Additional
include
mitigation.
that.
But you're not gonna, they don't have to remove the uranus, it's just painting understory, correct?
Oh, God, yeah, they,
Wherever they can find 1170.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be that.
Right.
Right,
okay.
so I think the
That's
closer we get to the,
Okay, so
limit, the
basically
better.
it's 10,894.
correct.
And then we got to do the,
Yes, we do.
So
Now we have to say whether it's a
Oh.
negative or a positive declaration. I'm feeling it's a negative
Yeah, sure is.
declaration because it would not warrant an impact statement. Does everyone agree with that?
Yes.
Definitely.
Okay, so Terry, would you make a
Did we go
motion?
through it? Do we
we
want to
have to
go
go
through
through
the
the whole thing?
EAF? Should we go through it?
No, we don't have it for tonight, but,
Oh, we don't have it from.
Yeah,
For the
no,
planning
but we're,
so if you
Okay,
could
so-
make a motion that we're neg decking the application.
Okay, so I will make a motion. Okay, do I have to, like a regular motion?
Yeah,
Okay.
just like a regular motion.
Yeah, make a motion for the application of Janice Wilson at 1 Gladstone Place in Montauk. Tax map 300-19-2-50.3, that the board declares that it is a negative declaration on the EAF for the EAF one.
I'll second that.
I concur.
Concur.
Okay, we good, Charlie? Okay, so the next is Susan Porter, 191 South Fairview Avenue in Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-28-5-24. Description is to allow a new egress window, shed, and a replaced hot tub, decking addition, and walkways to remain on a parcel of land containing and within setbacks of freshwater wetlands and within side yard lot line setbacks. A natural resource special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town, and 6 variances are required for this application. 1 variance of 3 feet from 255-1110 of the town code is required to allow the deck to remain 17 feet from the eastern side yard lot line, where a 20-foot setback is required. Variances of 45, 28, 25, and 23 from 255-430 of the town code are required to allow the existing egress to remain 55 feet, shed 71.5 feet, hot tub 75 feet, and deck addition 77 feet from freshwater wetlands, where 100-foot setbacks are required and any other relief necessary. Zoning district B residence zone, X flood zone, secret class type 2. Is this yours?
This was mine,
Oh, this is yours, okay.
and bear with me because I left all my notes. So this hearing was on September 23rd. The planner was Tyler Borsak, the TAM from July 24. The survey that we use is dated 10/4/2024. The agent for the applicant was Joe Halsey from Lighthouse Land Planning. Okay, this is a property, well, what happened on this, I'll give some history. There was an application back in 2018 that came in front of the ZBA, and it was to replace an existing hot tub at the time with a very small pool, which had been approved. The variances, this application is very similar to that one. What ultimately happened, the applicant replaced the hot tub that was existing back then with a hot tub that was larger and at 7.1 foot by 7.1 foot. And that put it into the category of a swimming pool, which increased some of the setbacks, the double setback on the variance from the eastern side yard, the 3-foot variance that was due to that. All the variances from the wetlands are, well, not all, except for the egress, all the other take that back, except for the egress and the shed, which did not exist back in 2018. It was a hot tub. The deck addition, these are all these improvements are on the landward side of the property. The variances are not huge. They're the minimum variances necessary for this. The additional size of the hot tub caused the deck addition to get larger also because the deck was moved around the hot tub. There were some questions on the TAM about the egress and concern that it would cause the applicants to build out in the basement. Joel Halsey testified that there was no plan, and it is in a document that he submitted to us also, that they have no plan to build out on the basement. It was done for emergency exit if there's an emergency in the house, that they don't have to go up the stairs to the main house to get out of the house, to get out of the basement. So that was added for that purpose. The pool that was referenced back in 2018, they did not do that, and there are no plans to do that. That application is done, and so the variance for the 3-foot, that was due to the change in the hot tub, and the shed was added, right, and it's placed right next to the hot tub, so the variance 28.5 feet from the wetlands on that. And the egress was added also with a 45-foot variance from the wetlands. And I think these meet the standards. I think that there's no, and the planners also said no, the preservation, the NRSP standards are met, that all structures shall be located on upland, which is the case on all these structures. And the grant of the variances won't cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood, it will not. And the benefit cannot be achieved by some other method and still keep these all maximum placed away from the wetland. And the area variances are not substantial in this case, and they won't have an adverse effect on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. And were they self-created? I don't know, I guess so. But anyway, I think it meets all the standards and the standards for the NRSP. There was some slight discussion about a scenic easement, but the planner did not request that, since because of the way the property is laid out and where the location of the wetlands. So I am approving this application in its entirety.
Member Mary?
Yes, thank you. I agree with approving the variances. I won't go through them, all the standards for each one, because Member Berger has said a lot of it, but I'll just go quickly. Obviously, this is a large lot encumbered by wetlands. Much of the lot is natural with a lot of vegetation on it and doesn't have developments on it. So with respect to the egress, 45% variance is substantial, but I don't see any other option because of the position of the house and the position of the below grade bedroom. So even though it's substantial, I still think it meets all the standards and will have no detrimental impact on any of the issues in the standards. The shed variance, less than 30%. If I remember correctly, this is a 17 square foot shed. So that I see that as having no detrimental impact at all. Again, this is on the non-wetland side of the house. Member Berger talked about how the double setback was triggered by a small expansion of a hot tub relative to the one was there. The bump out of the deck is not a lot of square feet. There's a uniqueness here. This is a funky shaped lot, and it's only a small portion that actually needs the setback, and the setback is, I think it's only a 15% variance. One question I had is they are relinquishing the approved pool. We're told they're not going to ultimately do the pool that was approved in that 2018 permitting. And I guess I want to know, like, do they have to actually formally, quote, cede that or abandon it, or it just, I don't know, council, you can tell us what's the right thing to do. So all in, I'm not going to belabor it. I believe this meets the NRSP standards, the variance standards. There are very, really insubstantial things that are being done. And I think it enhances the benefit, you know, of a little more usability on that back non-wetland area.
Member Yoho?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with my fellow board members. I think that there was the previous approval in 2018 for a pool that's larger than what exists now on the site. There was a reason it's come in front of us because they bumped it up from 6 by 6 to 7.5 by 7.5. Still, it's smaller than the previous approval that was made. I think the point was made by the planner, Tyler Borsak, that none of the variances appear to be significant. They all are on the landward or the opposite side of the house from the wetlands. He didn't feel there was significant impacts potential on the wetlands. He said the northwest deck, which is at the entry, does not need a variance. Work from there. Not a lot else to say about it. I think they've covered it about as far as the standards. I don't have to read those back in, but we're replacing a tub. We're following it. We have a previous approval that's very, very similar to what we have here. There's slight changes, a couple of feet, as was mentioned by Member Mearing, on a deck. And I think the 1 foot required for the deck would be only 14 feet from the property line, is minor and inconsequential. So I'm going to approve this application.
Member Thorson?
I'm in agreement with our fellow board members. I don't really have anything to add. The only thing that stuck out to me about this application was the egress window. And it was represented by Agent Halsey that it's not currently a living space, that that egress window was added for emergency egress. At one point, he did seem to indicate that there was a bedroom there, but that it's unfinished space. I think he might have just misspoke. And Terry Member Berger referenced a letter that states that it's an uninhabited space. So, and Agent Halsey did say that in the future, if they were to convert that to a living space, that they would then have to come back.
Right.
What would be triggered would be a building permit and then a natural resource special permit. So then it would be in front of us. That was the only thing that really stood out for me. I approve the application in its entirety.
Okay, I feel the development on this parcel is all focused around existing improvements. They're relatively modest improvements. None of the variances for the deck, basement egress, shed, and extending the deck are significant. The hot tub is actually 75 feet from the wetland. In terms of the new basement egress, which was added for safety, there will be no additional bedrooms. I don't see an intensity of use. And if there were to add bedrooms, the level of use would increase and it would require coming back to us, and it would require an updated septic system. And the egress poses no significant impact to the wetlands. The project poses no threat to the environment, preserves natural resources. No alternative reasonable uses exist, and there will be no disturbance or disruption of natural features. I will be approving this application as well in its entirety.
Vice Chair, I'll ask one question. There's no conditions recommended, but and maybe they're already bound to it from a prior NRSP, but I would love to see, if possible, a no fertilizer, no chemical use that often goes, with.
In this area?
Sorry?
I don't know that it goes with that in this
I don't know how.
location.
No, I don't know if they're already bound to it because they must have gotten, I don't know if they needed an NRSP before, but there's a lot of lawn on the property, and it's not overcleared, but there's still a lot of lawn. And I know when I was on the property doing my field study, there was things being applied. The landscapers were there. So I didn't know if that could be a condition, but.
Council, do you feel that there's a nexus to requesting something like that? I don't think
No, I don't
there
think
is,
there is.
But we're granting an NRSP.
How do you feel?
Oh, aren't we? Yeah,
Yeah, we are granting an
Yeah.
RSP, but in this area, this isn't like,
there's a wetland.
But how does
So what,
it
require
Require
covenant, well, there's already a law. I don't know if that's ever, I mean, I haven't seen that done recently.
well, maybe.
Right. I mean, is it? I don't think there's a nexus.
Truthfully, I think
even
there was a
asking
better
for
nexus for it on some other applications that we have today.
All right, I just wanted to.
I don't think we can go forward
Okay.
on that. Okay. Thank you.
Icebreakers.
All right, what am I doing? Does everybody approve this? Yes.
Eliminated. Good reason, showtime. Yes.
Okay, we go on to other decisions. We have Paul Bronzo at 65 Jacqueline Drive in Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-176-1-19. A modification of a 2024 determination to indicate reconstruction of decking in place and in kind. Morgan?
Yeah, so this was a recent application from the board that was an approval for some additions on the existing residence. And at that, during the normal application, they didn't propose to reconstruct the decks. They are now looking to reconstruct those decks in place in kind. There's no increase in the footprint. They will have to take out some of the footings and replace them. So there's some ground level disturbance there, which is why they're coming in for the modification.
I think
Yeah, I remember asking the agent during the hearing, like, those decks, like, there need to be redone, so it makes sense to me.
It's
So I'm
reasonable.
good with it.
I have no problem with it.
Neither do I.
Okay.
we have a motion.
Yeah, in the matter of Paul Bronzo, 65 Jacqueline Drive, Amagansett, Suffolk County, tax map 300-176-1-19, I make a motion to approve the modification of the 2024 determination as presented to us.
Second that?
I'll concur.
I concur.
Concur, thank you. Next, we have the draft minutes of Tuesday, September 30th, 2025.
Motion to approve the draft minutes from Tuesday, September 30th, 2025 for the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second?
Concur.
Concur.
Concur, thank you. We have going to resolutions. We have Susan Karesick at 67 Devon Road, Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-174-6-11.
I think we'll remember that this was an application on a 6,000 square foot lot in Beach Hampton. It was to legalize potentially two things: the extension mostly of a rear deck, which put it into setback jurisdiction, and then also a bin, small bin that was in basically on the property, the northern property line, and needed a pyramid. So I believe we were unanimous. We approved, we approved the deck legalization and the replacement of that deck in place and in kind, and we denied the bin in its current location. Okay, so I make a motion in the matter of Susan Karasick, 67 Devon Road, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-174-6-11, and make a motion to approve the resolution as written.
Second.
Concur.
Concur.
Concur. Next, we have Richard Perello, 11 Flag Avenue in Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-30-4-3.
Okay, this was an application where the lot coverage, building coverage, got exceeded over the town maximums.
Too many
You
things.
recall this was the owner, is also the contractor on this, and there were overhangs that were done. There was confusion with him and the building permits that he had looked at, and overall, this was a 3-2 approval of the application. Right? 3-2. So for Richard Perello at 11 Flag Avenue, Montauk, tax map 300-30-4-3, make a motion to approve the resolution as written.
Second.
Concur.
I concur.
Concur, thank you. Next, we have Robert McKinley at 239 Fairview Avenue in Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-19-7-40.8.
That was mine, and I'm going to have to apologize. I'm drawing a blank on it. I read it, and now I'm sitting here after doing 7 decisions, and I can't remember what it was about.
There's a couple of additions on the second story
Secondary
and
additions
and a
and,
pool house.
yeah,
in this new sanitary.
Yeah, okay, thank you for helping me out there.
Was it unanimous?
I'd like to make a motion, then, in the case of Robert McKinley of 239 Fairview Avenue, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-9-7-40.8, to accept the determination as written.
Second.
Concur.
I concur.
Concur. Thank you. We have Gary Davis and John McGinn at 275 3 Mile Harbor, Hog Creek Road, Highway in Springs, tax map number 300-75-1-32. This is the settlement of the dock.
Oh, right, yeah.
The description of the work that's being approved, court-ordered actually, natural resource special permit approval by the court, is to construct a dock consisting of a 4-foot by 30.5-foot fixed catwalk, 3-foot by 20-foot aluminum ramp, and 4-foot by 24-foot floating dock on a parcel of land containing coastal bluffs and adjacent to a surface tidal wetlands. I'd like to make a motion to approve the determination as written for Carrie Davis and John McGinn, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 75-1-32.2.
Second?
Concur.
Concur. Thank you. Next, we have Sand Capital Holdings.
Stepping off for this one.
You don't need to step off. You can
Well,
stay.
John, yeah, okay, vote.
You can vote from there.
It's just a
Sands
vote,
Capital
yeah.
Holdings LLC at 183 Marine Boulevard, Amagansett. Suffolk tax map number 300-176-8-23.3. John, want to make a
Yeah, I was
motion?
the lead for this application, which proposed two different roof lines. That one was flat and the other was gabled, both of which would pierce the pyramid law on the north and east sides, as well as a cottage, raising the roof there. And the board voted 4-1 in denial. So in the matter of the application of Sands Capital Holding, LLC, 183 Marine Boulevard, Amagansett, New York, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-176-8-23.3. I'd like to make a motion to approve the determination as written.
Second?
Concur.
Concur. Thank
Recused.
you.
Sorry.
And
I was
Vice
like,
Chair?
Do we want to, Charlie, are we doing the one more that determination?
Oh, I don't,
The tennis court?
the tennis
Yeah,
court, if
Michelson?
you guys are okay, I didn't put it on the, I didn't get it to get it on the agenda for today, so
Yeah, I
I
saw
don't know
it.
what.
I read it.
I was
Make
okay with it.
Motion. If you read it.
You want me- I did read it.
Make a
yeah.
motion.
Did anybody else read it?
I did,
Are you fine with it?
yeah.
I don't have the info though in front of me.
I can give you the, let's give you a second.
Yeah, just, okay.
I'll give you the,
Oh, right, the tax map.
I'll just give you the tax number, give me a second. It
So-
is, Stephen Michelson is the property owner, and the tax map is 300-159-1-18.31.
159-1
18.31.
Okay, Michelson. So we all know this was for a tennis court. This was denied 3-2. For Stephen Michelson, tax map number 300-159-1-18.31. I make a motion to approve the determination as written.
Second.
Concur. Concur. Thank you. Now, Vice Chair.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the zoning board of appeals at 8:28 on October 7th, 2025.
Second?
Concur.
Concur. Thank